Few months ago, I came across this Reddit post advertising this third-party Bretonnian miniature, and I absolutely had to pick him up. The knight himself is based off of this absolutely brilliant illustration from the 6th edition Bretonnian book. That's one of my favorite GW illustrations, and I was really excited to see a miniature that matches it. The image is in black and white, so I don't know what colors the artist intended. However, we know this is Marcus of Bordello, so I'm going to do the mini in a classic blue and yellow scheme. And I'm going to start with a little bit of snakebite leather on the leather undercoating beneath his chainmail. The mini itself was spray painted Chaos Black, and then Gray Sear, and finally just a little bit of Wraithbone. Basically, like I was doing a slap chop method. I prime all my models like I'm doing a slap chop method, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. You probably could have kept this just Chaos Black for what I'm going to do with this. And I'm just going to cover all the leather padding beneath the metal chainmail. Next, I'm going to grab some Iron Hand steel here and get all the chainmail bits in his armor and his boots. This color of silver metallic is fairly bright and light, which I think fits really well with the Bretonnian noble aesthetic. They do claim that this is a limited edition model, so if you're interested in picking it up for yourself, I'd recommend doing it relatively soon. I will drop the name of the company at the end of the video and a few times throughout the middle as well. Next, I'm going to grab some Averland Sunset and use it as the undercoat of all my yellow parts. Yellow is hard to paint. It's especially hard to paint over black. This is one of the main reasons why I made sure this model was very much done in Gray Sear. So if you're working with black, definitely coat it with something like Gray Sear or another transition color before you use any kind of yellow. Averland Sunset covers about as well as any yellow does, but it still does just terribly over dark colors. I really would not recommend doing it straight over black, and if you do, you're going to need to be very thin and do a lot, and I mean a lot of layers. The other side of his overcoat, I'm just going to hit with this Calidor Sky. I'm doing a very basic knight style here where one side is one color of the heraldry, the other side of his garments is the other color. But with how bright these colors are, I think going complicated is going to make it look a little too much, so I think simple goes a far way here. If you do manage to get your hands on this model, there is a lot of detail and a lot of little knickknacks you gotta paint around. I would try hard as you can not to get any of the metal chains with a different color, just because the very depths of those are going to be hard to get into, and if you get a flake of this blue on there, it's really going to stand out and you might have a hard time covering it later. For skin tone, I'm imagining this knight as fairly pale, so I want to start with the base coat of Wakard's flesh and give him a relatively light skin tone. If I was doing a darker or more tan skin tone, I would start with either Bugman's Glow or even Cadian Flesh. There is not a lot of flesh to cover on this model, basically just his face and his hands. Just got to be a little careful around the beard, which is in fairly fine detail. While I'm at it, I'm going to give his beard a base coat of black, and really any black will do. This is really just the bottom coat in which we build up to make it look more realistic. I'm using up some different contrast browns so all the leather doesn't look uniform. For the gloves, I'm using this Grunta fur, which has a reddish leather quality. And then for the wrap around his chainmail on his head, I am using Cygor brown, which is a very dark leather. There's nothing really fancy about the rest of the base coat here. I did the rest of the metal, like the chains that all of his doodads are attached to, and Leadbelcher, which is a darker metallic than the armor, which I think will contrast a little nicely. And all the gold bits I base in Balthasar gold, and then all the metallics that aren't gold or aren't silver, I use Brass Scorpion. Blues and the silver metallics, I did a wash of Known Oil, and for the yellow and the golds, I did a wash of Seraphim Sepia. The flesh of the knight should not be washed yet. We're going to do something a little bit different with that. I'm going to layer over the Rakarth flesh with this Kislev flesh, almost completely covering the undertone. The Rakarth is mostly there to help us as a transition, but maybe in the very, very darkest recesses, it's okay to leave that there. And finally, I'm doing my highest highlight here on the flesh with this flayed one's flesh. Just on the higher points, the high point of his cheekbones, the high point of his nose, you know, the very sharp edge of his lip, etc. The hardest part of this model was doing the beard because it was very small and very finely detailed. I didn't want to ruin the detail, and I didn't want his beard to look so black it was cartoony. I followed my very standard process, using as small a brush as I could. So I painted the beard black. I lightened up the higher bits. I tried to follow, you know, the details with Blue Reaper. I then tied those colors together with Known Oil, and then I did another highlight. To make the transition in Uriel, I was sure to add a lot of midtones to the cloth. This is a very simple technique, and it's probably the first thing you should figure out after learning the basic structure of base paint, wash, highlight. But basically what I'm doing to help aid in transition is I'm doing a 50-50 here of Averland Sunset. This is not quite a highlight, but we're not covering everything either. It's in between that. We want to leave the original Averland Sunset with the Seraphim Sepia in the recesses, and we want all other colors to be with this transition. And later we'll follow up with a highlight. And so then we'll get a steady gradient from dark to light. That'll look much better than just doing, say, one base, one wash, and a highlight. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing on the blue side with our Calador Sky and Teclis Blue. And then I followed up on that with a true highlight with the Uriel Yellow and a true highlight with the Teclis Blue. all that was really left at that point was to do the blade and to highlight the metallics. The blade is a little involved. Obviously, this is not really a tutorial video, so I'm not going to get into it too much. However, the basic idea is to cover your blade in a metallic and using some Griff Charger Gray, add some shadows area, and then using some lighter grades of metallics for the transitions, and so it looks like there's a light reflecting off your blade when you're done. Finishing it, of course, with the highlight of your brightest metallics along the edges. And this is what I ended up with when I was finished. I believe this is one of the best third-party miniatures I've had the pleasure to work with. I love the artwork it's based on. The detail was great. Whatever resin they're using was fantastic to work with. I would recommend it to anybody. If you're looking to score the model for yourself, they're from a company called Catchy Miniatures, and I'd recommend doing it as fast as you can because I do claim it is a limited model. As always, thanks for watching.